It is simply deplorable that there is still so much racism in the world today. No one should think they are superior to others just because they have a different skin color. For many, these facts may go unnoticed, but for those who experience racism, it is a constant struggle in their daily lives. Some forms of racism are, of course, more blatant than others, and for that reason, much more shocking and distressing to witness. And the incident in the story we are about to tell you about is a sad example of this. The protagonist of our story is Jeremy Thompson, a successful music marketing entrepreneur who, the day before his 38th birthday, had the misfortune to star in a shameful scene that shows how far our society is from understanding the terms equality and empathy. As we have already explained, Thompson was a very important music manager, which required him to travel a lot and spend more time on a plane than in his beautiful and gigantic house in New York. However, just because Jeremy was a businessman dedicated to his work didn't mean he couldn't enjoy life and give himself a well-deserved break from time to time. And that's precisely what he was about to do the day before his birthday, as he waited patiently for the airport attendants to check his luggage and give him the go-ahead to board the plane that would take him to the exotic and privileged place he had chosen to celebrate and disconnect from work for a week, the Dominican Republic. However, what Thompson would experience in that boarding queue would end up tarnishing his idyllic beach vacation and make him a social media star for several weeks. Jeremy had a first-class ticket and as such was waiting to board in the priority boarding area. There were many other passengers like him waiting to board the plane, people from all over the world, China, Spain, Germany, Cuba, etc., who had decided to treat themselves and travel to one of the most beautiful and touristic places on the planet to enjoy life. Unfortunately, not everyone felt the same way about the equal opportunity that people should have to access such privileges in life. And Jeremy Thompson was a direct witness to this. It all happened so fast. Thompson was still standing in the priority boarding line while looking at his cell phone, when suddenly he heard something that caught his attention and made him turn around to check if what he had just heard was really true. Right behind him, there was a very elegant woman who apparently didn't quite believe that Thompson was a first-class passenger and that he should leave the line and let her go first. "Excuse me, ma'am. I think you're in the wrong place. This line is for priority boarding, and I doubt very much that you would have access to this type of service. If you don't mind, my husband and I would like to board as soon as possible, and you are blocking us. Please step aside," said the woman in a contemptuous tone, giving him a look full of contempt. Jeremy could not believe what he was hearing, and trying to keep calm and remain polite to the woman, despite not deserving a shred of her respect, he replied, "If I am not mistaken, this row is for passengers who have purchased a first-class ticket and have preference to board before others. Isn't that right, madam?" he said, looking at her coldly. The lady, who was waiting for Thompson to turn away without arguing for fear of possible reprisals, remained mute for a few seconds, looking at him with all possible contempt, to finally reply, "That's right, this place is for privileged people, you know, classy people like my husband and me. No offense, but I think it's obvious that this place is not for you. Please let me pass and talk to the people in charge of the plane. I'm sure they will know where your seat is." Jeremy felt as if a water balloon had just been blown up in his face. Were there really still people like that in the world? Seeing that it was impossible to have a polite conversation with the lady, Thompson decided to go a step further and show the lady irrefutable proof of what he was telling her. Jeremy took his boarding pass from his pocket and held it up high for the lady and everyone there watching them to see. "First class, ma'am. It seems to me that the only mistake here is your lack of education. Or maybe you need to see an eye doctor to help you see the reality of things better. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Actually, I'd love to be wrong," he said, holding the card up and speaking in a much louder and more defiant tone than Jeremy usually used to use. The lady, however, continued not believing a single word of what Mr. Thompson was saying, and instead of apologizing and closing the absurd discussion, she continued to insist on her initial argument, complicating things even more. You must be in the military or something. It is the only explanation for being able to acquire that accreditation. However, my husband and I continue to need to get through to get to our seats. Seats that we have paid for with our money, so I invite you to wait and step aside. Thank you, she said nonchalantly, cutting Jeremy off as he grew increasingly frustrated. The tension in the atmosphere was palpable because the discussion had become so loud that it was no longer a private matter between Thompson and that mysterious and annoying couple, but of all those present in the terminal who looked at them with eyes like saucers without believing what was happening there. Jeremy, who was a person of recognized respect, very unaccustomed to live uncomfortable situations like that, felt that anxiety and anger were taking over him at times, and that was something he was not going to allow to happen. Even so, knowing that everyone was looking at him and that he would probably end up becoming an internet meme in a few hours, he decided to answer once to that nasty woman who had set out to ruin his birthday and vacations.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
He approached her, and in a loud and clear voice answered her. "I am not a military man either, madam. I am too old for that. I am simply a dark-skinned man with a lot of money. As much money as you have, maybe even more. But that's none of your business. And now, if you don't mind, I have to take a first-class flight, because I paid for my ticket with my money, and I have the right to go in front of you and your respected husband. Have a nice day." As he finished the sentence, Thompson turned around, grabbed his suitcase, and hurried to the front area, where he was expected to board. Everyone in line and the rest of the people who had been following the discussion attentively broke into applause. Jeremy had never experienced anything like it. His heart was beating fast. He knew he had done a foolish thing by acting that way. He could have ignored her and continued to wait his turn. But something inside him told him that he could not remain silent. What example would he set to the rest of the people who, like him, struggle every day to be respected? Silence would have been useless, and he refused to agree with that unpleasant woman. But the most exciting part of this story was yet to come. Thompson decided to forget about it and focus on his trip. After all, the next day was his birthday, and he should not let such an incident spoil his vacation. He got on the plane, sat down in his first-class seat, which luckily was far away from that lady whose name he hadn't even bothered to ask, put on his headphones, and turned up the volume so that his thoughts could only focus on the audiobook he was listening to. The flight was long, and although Thompson tried to distract himself in every possible way, listening to music, audiobooks, or watching movies, in the end, his mind always went back to the discussion in the boarding queue at the airport. "I have to stop thinking about it. It was a mistake. Tomorrow it will all remain a bad memory, and hopefully no one will ever know what happened," Jeremy thought shortly before disembarking. But it didn't take long for Thompson to realize that his hopes of forgetting about the airport discussion would vanish in a matter of seconds as soon as he set foot in the Dominican Republic. When Thompson landed at his vacation destination 8 hours later and logged on to social media, he discovered that his controversial discussion and his applauded response to the woman's comments had become a trending topic, and the post was already garnering thousands of views, comments, and likes from people all over the world. Realizing the extent of his actions, Jeremy felt a mixture of emotions, ranging from gratitude to remorse. For while there was no doubt that the woman's actions were unacceptable and deserved to be reprimanded, Thompson was not comfortable with his reaction to the couple's continued provocations and knew that his actions were not appropriate. Therefore, after 2 hours of reading the thousands of comments that were beginning to accumulate in the publication, Jeremy began to regret his actions and decided to do something that would put an end to the conflict in the most amicable way possible. The next day, momentarily forgetting that it was his birthday and unable to get what happened out of his head, he posted a video asking for his attitude and urging everyone not to take an example of his attitude towards the comments of a woman whose only goal was to hurt his feelings. The story was undoubtedly real, just as this affair is undoubtedly real. But I know now that I should have handled it differently myself, or left it as it was, and not answered that way in front of all those people. He began and continued, "When I deal with people, I always try to stay on the right side. So to make sure that I never do wrong to anyone, I try to always put myself in that person's shoes and ask myself how I would feel if that person did this to me. And if I were her, it's clear to me that I would be a wreck today. And that doesn't help to improve this situation, or her. It only generates more anger and brings more drama to a very complex issue that millions of people have been suffering from for hundreds of years. With my attitude, I only increase the problem and increase the pain on both sides. I am not proud and I want to take it back," he finished. After sharing the video apology, millions of people responded by applauding his honesty and big heart. The reach of the publication was so great that even some national media wanted to echo the news and congratulate Thompson for how he had acted and had set an example of good manners to all. "Mr. Thompson, you are a gentleman," said the front page of The Independent, one of the most widely read newspapers in the country. Racism has no place in today's society. We all know that. The idea that someone is better or worse because of their race or the color of their skin is archaic and meaningless. However, while the vast majority of us understand this and will oppose racism wherever it rears its ugly head, there are still people to evolve properly. People like the couple Jeremy Thompson had the misfortune to meet that day. I'm glad this man taught the woman a good lesson, but most of all, I'm glad he was able to recant his attitude in front of millions of people and set an example to everyone on how best to deal with a problem like this. Did you like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.